Hey everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back trekking right through part 6 of the Count of Monte Cristo. And part 6 is freaking huge. And it's been fun too. It is like the grand introduction to all of the rest of the characters, really. And also, more than that, you get to see him finally, kind of like get his, just the very beginnings of his revenge. And it's just like in little well-turned phrases, little things here and there, little insults, little jibes that are just cutting right through at Danglars. It's just so cool and so well done. So, how does it start out? The very first chapter is called Unlimited Credit. So here we get to see basically Danglars has received a letter from the firm of Thompson and French saying that the Count of Monte Cristo has unlimited credit. He can basically come and get as much money as he needs, for his stay in Paris. So Danglars wants to pay a visit to the Count, and the Count's like, well, yeah, I'm not at home at this time, right? So he leaves his card for him. But then the Count pays him a visit later, and it's just basically a wonderful back and forth between the two, where the Count is putting him in his place. And he's basically, everything that this guy says, he's telling him, oh, well, you think that's a lot of money? Like, I have $1 million right here in my pocket. And he pulls out £1 million and it's like, drops it on the table, right? And he's like, what? And it's wonderful because it's like, with people like Danglars, they don't need to be lightly prodded. They need to be bludgeoned, for it to have some kind of effect. So, basically, Danglars is wanting to know, well, how much money are you planning to draw? And he's like, well, I'm going to need maybe about $6 million or whatever for this amount of time. And it's so fun to see. At first, Danglars is so full of himself. He's like, oh, well, I'm a big shot here. And just he's so put into his place by Monte Cristo's actions. Just everything that he says and does just shows that he is leaps and bounds above him, right? Now, when Danglars goes away, somewhat unhappy, that he was kind of, he was treated gentlemanly, but obviously he knew that that Monte Cristo got the upper hand on him, But anyway, he's ready to do business with him, and he's happy to be able to do business with him, and I guess he feels now that it's not a risky thing. He was kind of worried at first about this unlimited credit, right? Now, this is fun, too. As he's leaving, Monte Cristo sees his horses, and he's like, Bertuccio, I said I wanted to have the best horses in Paris, and there go the best horses in Paris. You need to go buy them. And he's like, well, those things cost like 16,000 francs. He's like, we'll offer him 32,000. So he's like, go get them. And listen, I got an appointment today at 5 o'clock, and I want them horses. So anyway, he sure does get the horses, right? So anyway, he takes his horses, he puts them onto his cart, and they go to pay a visit to Villefort. I keep hitting the wrong button. Do I have it? There are not a lot of etchings for this part here, really. But anyway, I do believe this scene here. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Anyway, as in with the visit to Danglars, the chapter Ideology, the conversation between the Count and Villefort, is awesome. The whole chapter is basically just one long conversation between them, and it starts out with, Count de Morcef kind of trying to show how superior he is, but then, man, the Count just brings it around to show that how his wealth and his power, because of that wealth, give him this kind of incredible avenging power, right? And it's just, it's kind of weird how the Count lays himself out right there in front of his worst enemy, basically, one of them, as what he is, right? The whole conversation, like I said, is just very well done. And you can even tell that during the conversation, the Count Morcef is so caught up in it. He's like, whoa, I had no idea like that you were such a good speaker, or like this would be such an interesting conversation to have. So, and again, it's just one chapter of this whole conversation between them, right? And again, so you had this big deal going on there between the two of them. Then you get, I love this too. Again, with this book, you have these peaks and these valleys, right? You're always going up and down and up and down and up and down. So you had this awesome meeting with his two worst enemies, right? Where he, through the power of his oratory, has kind of, upended them, or to kind of put them somewhere they didn't expect to be after that conversation. But then the next two chapters, 3 chapters really, totally different. First off, we get to have a detailed look at Haiti. And this is interesting too. So Haiti is the young Greek woman that he's brought with him, and basically treats like a princess but calls a slave, right? So she has her own section here that's all her own part of the house. And as Dumas does, everything is beautifully described. And the whole room sounds so cool. It is lit only entirely by a skylight, which is pink-hued glass, which goes down onto this room with all of these divans and plush rugs and all these things. And then a wonderful description of young Haiti. And it's awesome just the difference, because she loves the Count. I mean, she loves the Count, but she also loves him like as a father and as a savior. And the Count loves her, but is also, I think, too afraid to love someone. So just kind of loves her as, I don't know, maybe just hoping. I don't know. But I love and I think it's even mentioned too, it's like, he's got to have all this evil, all this revenge, all this wickedness, so then he needs a balm. You need a balm for your heart. You got to go and you got to have that, taken away. So that's what happens. He goes to see Haiti, and then he goes and he meets the Morels. As he promised, he pays a visit to Maximilian, and then young Emmanuel and his wife, who is Maximilian's sister, Julie. Haha, I remembered. Okay. And oh shoot, crap. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. The dappled grays. Anyway, the horses. Remember we were talking about the horses? Oh my goodness. Anyway, Monte Cristo buys the horses. He takes them over there. Madame Danglars sees the horses and is mad. She's like, I want my horses back. How could you do that, Danglars? Anyway, but he did. He took the horses. He arranged to have the horses bought after Danglars stopped in the first time and gave the business card, and then he bought them that day and took them to his house. Like that is some like real like I'm showing you up kind of stuff. But anyway, he sends the horses back for free to Madame Danglars because he doesn't want to upset her, right? And she was going to loan those horses to Madame de Villefort, right? Because she was going to go for a nice ride in the country, wanted to try out these horses. So Count's got a plan. Always got a plan. He asked Ali, would you be able to stop 2 runaway horses? And Ali's like, yeah, Ali could stop like a lion, all right? So anyway, they go out to their house at Auteuil, and what happens? Raging down the road, here comes the horses and the carriage, and it's got Madame de Villefort and the young Edouard in it, and they are about to be smashed to bits, right? But then Ali, with his lasso and his skill with the animals, is able to bring them down. The Count is able to revive young Edouard, who kind of passed out, and then win the eternal graciousness of Madame de Villefort, right? We kind of skipped that part when I went to talk about the ideology section. But anyway, as you can see, Ali takes care of the horses just fine. And then here, oh yes, we did get a scene with Haiti. Look, here is a scene in Haiti's room where she's lounging on her bed there, very comfortable looking, where he's getting his balm for his heart. And then here's Madame de Villefort. Oh yeah, see, and also, man, I missed all these etchings. Anyway, going back to the conversation between Villefort and the Count is talking basically about himself being raised up like how Jesus was to the highest peaks, and the devil on his shoulder, and then he basically gets the power, or anyway, it's just a story he's telling to show like the immense power that his wealth and position can give him to do things that otherwise people could not do, right? Okay, perfect. So anyway, they bid adieu, and then again he sees Haiti, but now he wants to go and get some more balm for his heart, and he goes to meet with the Morels, and he meets young Maximilian there at his home, and he meets this is Julie, who's now Madame Emmanuelle Herbaut, and she's kind of just gardening in her garden, taking care of things. And again, a lovely scene. The joy of these young people, the happiness, and I love how they're like, as soon as they know that he knows an inkling of something that could possibly be important to them. He mentions the firm of Thompson and French, which is the firm that saved the Morel and Sons all that time ago. So now they're like, oh, what do you know? Do you know anything? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? What do you know about that? And he tells them, of course, about Lord Willimore, the Englishman who would, perform these kinds of things. The sailor Penelon is now a gardener there in young Julie's garden. Don't get ahead. Anyway, this whole scene is lovely just because it's balm for the Count's heart, because these two people are so eternally grateful for what happened those 10 years ago when, Morel and company was saved. And it's just like filling up the Count with all this joy, right? And you can just tell he keeps having to like kind of turn away and just like he's like coughing to hide his emotion. And they've even kept the little red bag all this time that the Count, gave them. So just a very fun scene. And then there's more. Then they continue it on, and they bring in the joy even more into this book, and we get to finally meet one of my favorite characters in the book, Valentine. The title of the chapter, I think, is Pyramus and Thisbe, and I had to look it up. I wasn't sure what it was, but typical star-crossed lovers, right? Their parents would never approve of their engagement, so you get this fun little scene here where they are meeting in this kind of dividing wall. So on one side is a garden, on the other side is the Villefort's garden. And so Valentine will sometimes go out there to do some crocheting and some knitting, and then we'll meet her young interest there at the fence, right? Here she is, Valentine de Villefort, sitting there on the bench awaiting Maximilian. So just a very, it's different, it's just so different, this part of the book too, because these two, they're like, he's expressing his love to her, and he's so like noble. I don't know, it's just so good, and she is just so, man, it's just such a fun little break in the book, right? Because you're just getting kind of something different here, and when you first read it, you're like, what is this? This is just not. But then it's all part of the ride. It's all part of the up and the down and the joys and the sorrows. But this whole section just goes to show, kind of laying this future path, for what or what's going to be coming up here, which is fantastic. Whew, wow. Okay. But then, again, you're up here. This is really nice. And then, whoa, we're dipping down into something kind of deep. The Count meets up with Madame de Villefort, and they end up having a fairly in-depth conversation after she, of course, makes sure that they're all alone and no one else is there to listen, about different various poisons, because she has an interest in poisons or something like that, right? So, man, this is also very interesting too, because right here, the Count lays the path for her, which turns into tragedy, right? It turns into tragedy. But that's what he's going for. He's going for this tragedy, but he doesn't know how this tragedy is going to affect someone that he cares about, right? So it's like, whoa. But in the end of this, the Count ends up giving her, quite a bit of different advice and things, or just talks about how different poisons and different things like that. But he has his little home remedy, which he uses when he needs to, when he feels faint or whatever, and he gives her some of that. And this is, I think it's kind of the same thing that Abbey Faria, used to revive himself after his attack. So anyway, the seeds are sown. The path is right there for her to go down. So, now we get to go to the opera. All right, let me see what the next picture is here. Hang on. Oh, anyway, look, there's young Maximilian pretending to be a gardener, digging with his spade after she gets called away, right? And then, of course, here is Madame de Villefort and young Edouard, who is such a punk kid. He's like, I'm going to tear all the pictures out of this album, and I'm not going to leave unless you let me do it. He pulled the tails out of that poor parrot. He's not a nice child, right? But anyway, just as I was saying, look, she had to make sure that everybody was gone. Look, she checks the door, she closes the door, so she could sit down and have her sus conversation with the Count about poisoning people. Look at her. She is like... Okay. We're getting into something later on, but she's like one of the most evil characters in the book, right? Even though what she does, and why she does, or why she claims she does it, like seriously, she is really terrible. She's terrible. And in this engraving, like you can see, look at her conniving eyes, right? And again, he is gallant enough to offer the reviving potion to her, as you can see by the engraving there. But now, let us go to the opera. This was so cool. This is such a coincidence. Okay, the next chapter, titled Robert Le Diable. I'm probably saying that wrong. It was an opera that was put out in 1831 in Paris. And this chapter is basically the characters attending that opera and conversing with each other while they pay no attention to the opera at all, which was kind of, what was done in Parisian society at that time, right? So anyway, I was looking for a picture. I said, Paris Opera House, 1850. Click, click, click. These had a watermark. That had a watermark. I found this one didn't have a watermark. Click it. Look into it. Do you know what it is? It's a depiction of the play Robert Le Diable. Diable? 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 It's the play! How cool. This is the play. So I can picture this being the opera house that they were at. And this is the play that they were actually watching. This is a depiction of the play that the chapter in the book is about. I love it. I love it. Anyway, they're at the opera, okay? And basically, I think we're looking at this from Albert and his friend's point of view, right? So they're at the opera, and they're kind of doing like opera box gossip, right? Where they're looking around at the different boxes, talking about the different people that are there. They can see the Countess G is there, and Albert knows her, but his friend doesn't, so he wants to get introduced. So they do the introductions, and they also go down to the Danglars are there as well. Eugenie. This is, I think, too, where you kind of get to meet Eugenie a little bit more. You get to learn a little bit more about her. She is the daughter of Madame and Monsieur Danglars, and she is engaged to be married, and Albert is not very happy about this, to Albert Morcef, right? And this is, I think, coming up here in about 2 months. So he, again, is not very happy. He would like to remain a bachelor, although it's nothing to do with her. She's a very fine young lady. And I also love how right at the beginning of the introduction of Eugenie, they're already laying the seeds that, yes, she does not like men. She does not want to be with a man, okay? And, I mean, that's just awesome. I think that's awesome, like, for, like... I guess I don't know. I don't know how, like, was that something that at that time that was even... No, it wasn't probably, right? So anyway, I like that. Very cool. And I like her attitude is very cool, too. So, one of the very fun characters in this book as well. And I love how her story ends as well. But anyway, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. Anyway, opera box gossip. They're all just kind of talking to each other back and forth, right? This person wants an introduction to this person. This person wants an introduction to this person. And everybody wants to meet with the Count of Monte Cristo, right? And he, of course, is up in the top box. You can see him up there with young Haiti. And then down in the Morcef's box, the Count de Morcef, he usually doesn't come in until the end. So one of the fun things about this chapter too is just kind of it's a look into how the opera really went in Paris at this time, right? People would show up as the play was starting. They would spend the first act talking, doors opening and closing, And mainly it was like a kind of a social thing where people would be going back and forth trying to meet up with each other. So he goes up and he meets with the Count of Monte Cristo, who leaves Ali there to guard the door for Haiti. And then they go and the Count meets up with Eugenie and Madame Danglars in their box. Here he is giving a nice bow to them. That's the little house in Monte. Getting ahead of myself here. Okay, perfect, okay. But anyway, they have a nice little scene there at the opera where, in the end, I love how the end of it is, the Count de Morcef finally comes in, and Haiti looks down into the box and is stunned. And then you see this from further on, right? You hear a scream, ah, and the Count's like, oh no, I better go check and see what's on. She probably just fainted or something. And he goes up there and he's like, what did you see? Says, that man down there, that's the man that betrayed my father. Dun dun dun. So now you can see already, like, this whole thing is just more of the Count's plan, right? Like, him bringing Haiti to the theater right there at that time, not telling her anything beforehand, letting her see him and make the distinction, make the recognition. Very cool, very cool. The next day, they have a little interesting talk about basically the stock market and how Danglars is able to use the stock market to, and not just Danglars, but his wife, to make a ton of money. To which the comment is made from Albert, which is kind of interesting. Well, why not teach someone a lesson? Because, they make their money on the news. So if you give somebody the wrong bit of news and then they invest in the wrong stock, then oh no, all of a sudden maybe they wouldn't be so willing to do that, right? So, and then at the very end of this section here, you meet another two players into this. And you have the older Major Cavalcanti, and an Italian who has lost his son when he was very, very young, and has been sent to the Count of Monte Cristo via the Abbé Busoni, I believe, to find his son. He's been sent with his letter of recommendation. And again, this is great because you as the reader, you don't know what's going on. And you can tell that Major Cavalcanti, he also doesn't know what's going on. He's like, oh, am I? Is that right? Is the letter correct? Because he's been told to do this, but you know that he's not who he says he is. And then you meet his son, the young Andrea Cavalcanti, who's been given the same kind of story. He's been given this letter, told to go do this at this certain time, say you're this person, and you're here to meet this person, and your fortune will be made, right? So again, you can just see the Count laying down these threads, right? And I don't know if we know who Cavalcanti is at this point. I know who he is, but I'm not going to give it up yet. But what we do know is that they are both not who they say they are, and that the Count's kind of disgusted with their character, but knows like he's got to use them. But interesting section, part 6, right? He's met his worst enemies. He's bested them in oratory. He's impressed them with his money. He's bought their horses. He's given back their horses. He's went and he's balmed his heart with Haiti, the Morels. We've met Valentine. We've been set on a road, a very dark road for Madame de Villefort, right? With the poisoning. We've got the Paris opera. We've got Paris speculation on the stocks. And we've met the Cavalcantis. And that basically ends us at, let me see where we're at here. Major and Andrea Cavalcanti. Oh my gosh. And then we're going to be jumping right into part 7 next. And basically it's all like a big snowball getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it rolls downhill. we're going to be coming up on some fantastic things here. Anyway, we did forget to show you the engravings. Major Cavalcanti meeting up with the Count of Monte Cristo. Again, like I said, he's like, is the letter really true? And then you have the young Cavalcanti here, who was saved from some kind of situation by the famously philanthropic Lord Wilmore. Here they are embracing each other there in front of the Count, and here they are walking away at the end as a couple of rogues, who are doing what they need to do to get by, I guess. Anyway, that is the end of that part as well. I haven't saved any more pictures yet. Let's go to that one. Yes, end of part 6. Again, a lot going on. Fantastic conversations between the Count and his enemies. And Dumas, again, just does a bang-up job of describing everything so well that I can picture these scenes just as though as I were there, So that was fun. We're going to read a lot more, and we'll be back to talk about this very, very soon. As always, my friends, live long and prosper. We'll see you guys at the next one. Good night.